blank will come out on top after the dust-up between Trump and Maine Governor Janet Mills.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
This is difficult. There's a lot of different ways we could go with this. So I'm going to take one that I don't think you're going to answer, Sarah, and I'll say resistance fundraisers will benefit the most from the dust-up between Janet Mills and Donald Trump. And we haven't really seen any Democrats effectively stand up to Trump yet, right? Chuck Schumer and Maxine Waters are going to the EPA and crying about how they're not let inside when DOJ is checking out the systems and all of that stuff. But we haven't seen anyone actually physically stand up to Trump and say, I'm not going to listen to you because I'm following federal law and I'm following state law. I don't know if she will win in court against the Trump administration, but like the Democratic operatives I'm talking to, even Democratic lawmakers, it's clear there's no real sort of compass that they're following in terms of a coordinated playbook to push back on Trump like there was during the first administration. I think this is a specific instance where, again, the resistance, they can look and point and say, oh, okay, we've got a North Star again. Here's how we push back. And the money's going to follow. Because let's be honest, Donald Trump won the White House, I forget with how many millions of votes, but there were a lot of millions of votes. That's right. But there were a lot of people who were very angry that he won this time around again. And I think they were disillusioned with the Democratic Party, and this might just sort of rev their engines again and say, okay, we're going to start pouring in the donations, and maybe we can march on Washington with our pink hats and not feel terrible about throwing $2 billion down the drain like we saw with the Harris campaign last summer.
You know who would absolutely love for this to be the resistance's like a rallying cry is Donald Trump. This is the dumbest fight they could possibly line up behind.
All right.
It's an 80-20 issue, as Scott Jennings would say. Most people, 8 out of 10 people, think it just makes sense that biological boys should not be allowed to play in girls' sports.
What is your word that you'd fill in the blank here?
I'm hoping girls in sports will come up on top of this one. I mean, they have been advocating for this for years and finally have achieved it. It's why Title IX exists in the first place. This is not an issue on which the country is divided. Most people think it's absurd to fight to have people who were born men to play in women's sports. And so if the Democrats choose this as the fight, this is the one that we are going to sweep back into power on. I think that's just a huge mistake because the issue is so lopsided in Trump's favor.
Yeah.
And previously, we've heard Democrats say for years when they are allowing this sort of thing to happen over the howls of protest from the parents of these students, we're just following the law, we're just following the rules, because the Biden administration did try to rewrite Title IX. It's not
even try, they did.
They did. They didn't quite have time to fully implement it by the time that rule was finalized. But now it's not the law anymore, and all of these Democrats who secretly favor it but know it's unpopular, and so they were just hiding behind the fact that this was the federal regulations, Kamala Harris included. Now, if they're going to keep fighting for this, they have to come out and explicitly support it because it is no longer the law that they have to allow boys into girls' sports. And so I think Democrats will really further marginalize themselves if this is a fight that they choose to pick.
You're also looking at, not that Democrats are a homogenous group or anything like that, but let's just say national Democrats. We're pretending like they've had great judgment when it comes to selecting issues in the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if they do pour resources in, and Democratic voters. I truly do think, I agree, the issue is a losing issue for Democrats. But just seeing someone stand up, and a woman, for what it's worth, standing up to Donald Trump and saying, no, I'm going to defy you, that's going to change the status quo that we've seen over the last month, where the resistance has the hot air let out of them, and they're just kind of saying, well, I guess this is the new normal now.
Yeah, maybe keep an eye on Governor Mills. You know, there's a big Senate race in Maine in 2026.
That's
so it'll be
true.
a big
That's true.
seat of spending.